The reason is because I don't let any other story or construct or offer govern what it is that I'm doing with my life. And
Mm,
so I'm free. Like that's a level of freedom that some millionaires don't have. Because I've consulted for people who are multimillionaires several times,
mhm.
and they're not free. And that some are, but a lot aren't. And it's because they haven't relieved themselves from this construct that governs them and controls them. And it doesn't matter how much money you have, you'll never be free if you're like that. So when you can get that sense of where things come from, and also more importantly, where they don't, you're not controlled by that sort of stuff. So you can live a much more free life, irrespective of how much money you have, whether you have followers and fame, whether you're digging ditches for work. So that's primarily what we teach these days is these lessons of natural law because really honestly I don't think you can be free in the world if you're constantly fixated on the world and trying to fit into it or change it. I think that's like a terrible place to be. And I've been there. That's how I ended up with chronic fatigue syndrome for 20
Right.
years. Because honestly, the one of the biggest, as soon as I start talking about this sort of stuff on a live stream,
Yeah.
like, sustaining yourself and business and creativity, and am I doing enough in the world? Why do I find it frustrating to do like, do I need to be on social media or do I need a voice and all that? Like, that's a lot of people are in that situation. And
I
because you
agree.
have one and a lot of people don't, I think a lot of people would be fascinated to see that you go through some of these questions for yourself and these processes that they think maybe someone in your position doesn't go through because you have a platform and a book and you're a speaker and they must be like, Adrian's the dude. Like, how could he possibly think that? Do you know what I mean? But you go through it. So maybe that's really
Yeah.
valuable for people.
Look, I think it is valuable for people. Like I said to you before we started recording, I really love your work. I get a really good vibe out of your conversations that you have, the way you explain things. It just makes me feel comfortable. And I guess someone like myself in this position, and you probably would relate to this, is like some people think that I have my shit together and I know all the answers and everything's just like rosy on my side. But if they've been initially introduced to me on this platform, then they may think that. But the reality is that how I kind of started with all of this quote unquote like online success was purely expressing myself in the current form that I was in at that time. So I did it through a business sense. And then I kind of was being more sort of mechanical about marketing and all that kind of stuff. And then when the pandemic hit, I just went through a massive shift, but it was more built from initially rage and like disgust and upset because my world was getting turned upside down, first monetarily and then emotionally, and then obviously with my marriage breakup. My kids were, this is 6 years ago, so my eldest will turn 20 this year. So they're like very young adolescent kids that are going through a huge global shift in consciousness, as well as their mum and dad splitting up, dad's losing the business. He's made a terrible decision economically and financially, it's affecting all of us. And because he's yapping his fucking mouth off, the world's getting harder, not easier, right? Like he's not making things go away, he's actually amplifying things. So I kind of express myself through, I don't think this is the thing that everyone is saying it is, and I'm going to speak my mind. The more and more I did that, like you with your no virus video, like everyone just smashed me and said, you're not a virologist and all that kind of stuff. And then I thought, well, I do have this platform that I kind of built. Maybe I should go and speak to people that know what they're talking about. And that's how this sort of birthed. But yeah, people perceive me, I think, as someone who has their shit together. And I can tell you, hand on heart, I don't have my shit together. I am figuring it out the best way that I know, as best as I can. And then through my lived experience, I just want to share it with other people because I don't know what you got told during the pandemic, Tom, but like a lot of people say to me, if it wasn't for you, I just wouldn't have felt as sane as what I do now. You kind of were the glue that held things together when everyone else around me was discombobulated. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Yep. Do you want me to go off of that, or do you want to?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
So
Podcast
one
just
of
about
the, well, first of all, thanks, and it's good to chat to you again. And look, I think what I'd say is that not many people I've ever met in life have their shit together. Like
Mm,
really not many. But then I would say that a lot have, but it's just not what people think. So in all honesty, I'm really comfortable with life. I don't find that I don't have my shit together in a relative sense, but of course, as a human being, as a man, I don't know what I'm doing, like in the grand scheme of things. But the reason that we ended up just focusing on natural law is because it seems to be a way that people can, if you can understand a lot of the principles, you can really have some peace and clarity, especially with the world and what you're doing, because everything that we're dealing with is an illusion, and everything we're dealing with is construct, and it's built on nothing natural. It's not like quote unquote God's creation. It's all fictitious. So it has to be upheld because it can't uphold itself. It has to be upheld by something natural. And that tends to be our uh, you know, either anxiety, depression, fearfulness, and whatever, because we don't really know who we are. So we don't really know what the world is and how to interact with it. So while I'm not rich, I have a really comfortable standing relative to the construct of money.
mhm,
And while I don't have my shit together, so to speak, and I don't love online stuff, but I have my whole business is based on online. I have a very comfortable relative standing or relative relationship to the construct of online or having a voice.
mm,
So it's when you can actually get your head around or get it's more than your head, it's your feeling that it gets in check with what's real and what's not, what's construct, and just how you interrelate with a construct and instead of it consuming you or ruling you or governing you and controlling, then you're free from it. So I don't love social media, but I also don't hate it because I used to, by the way, I used to have, it used to drain me no end. But
mm.
that's why you probably see, like, I don't post much. But if you go on YouTube and it's like, how to get successful at social media, post 4 times a day, do this,
Yeah,
do
that's
that.
right.
Like I've never put a hashtag on a post. I've
Yeah.
never asked people to subscribe, follow, share, click, whatever.
Uh-huh.
I've never done that and I'm totally fine. You know what I mean? Like I do what I do and whatever will be, will be. I don't have like, there's nothing that needs to happen from that.
Mhm.
So as a result, it doesn't drain me anymore. Like I'll go on and if I feel there's something that should be said, very rarely do I feel I have to say something. I don't really feel like I need to say anything, but relatively speaking, to a construct that's offered to me, I might have like that's an offer. So I might have a conditional acceptance of it, or a yes or a no, and that's what I'll express. And
Mhm.
then in that way, my intention is for that to be able to help other people relieve construct of mind and maybe open a new avenue of thought so they have a better understanding of themselves so they get to know themselves better rather than getting to know me better or anything like that. And for me, that's so easy. It doesn't drain me at all. Same with money, like you were mentioning before, you're in a good place, but you're not rich. Like I'm not rich either. But
Mm.
I did a stream the other night on Instagram and I put it on my YouTube and it's called I should forget what it's called. But I was speaking a lot about the fuel situation
Yeah.
and how for the like I can't buy a new car necessarily, but I don't think about fuel.
Mhm.
Whereas in the past, I shared a story of when fuel went up 3 cents a liter in like 1998 or something like that.
That
And
is
everyone's just
a
flipping
true
out. And I'm
story.
like, it just went up 50 cents overnight. And I
Yeah.
don't care. I don't even look at what's on the bowser. I haven't for years. I don't look at the price of fuel. I put fuel in, I pay for it, and I leave. And the reason is because I don't let any other story or construct or offer govern what it is that I'm doing with my life. And
Mm.
so I'm free. Like that's a level of freedom that some millionaires don't have. Because I've consulted for people who are multimillionaires several times,
Mhm.
and they're not free. And that some are, but a lot aren't. And it's because they haven't relieved themselves from this construct that governs them and controls them. And it doesn't matter how much money you have, you'll never be free if you're like that. So when you can get that sense of where things come from, and also more importantly, where they don't, you're not controlled by that sort of stuff. So you can live a much more free life, irrespective of how much money you have, whether you have followers and fame, whether you're digging ditches for work. Like that could be God's work if you're digging ditches. You don't have to be the Rolls Royce driving site foreman and just be like telling everyone what to do. You can be the guy in the ditch and you're the most free guy there, or you could be the biggest slave. It's all how are you hiding from something? Are you doing it out of just, is there clarity in it? Are you not valuing yourself, or are you highly valuing yourself? It's not the act, it's what goes into it. So that's primarily what we teach these days is these lessons of natural law, because really, honestly, I don't think you can be free in the world if you're constantly fixated on the world and trying to fit into it or change it. I think that's like a terrible place to be. And I've been there. That's how I ended up with chronic fatigue syndrome for 20
Right.
years. So yeah, so I mean, I shared this before, but how I got out of that was not changing diet. And I was a fairly highly paid guy to teach people about holistic health, like nutrition, movement, breath, sleep, all of that sort of stuff. And I didn't change any of that. And that's how I got out of chronic fatigue syndrome without
Mm.
changing any of those things.
Yeah, look, I think from what I interpret about just the pure, for me personally, understanding that there is a choice between what is on offer and whether you want to take that up and to what capacity you want to buy into whatever's being projected in the world. It's when you divert your attention away from the problems of the world to um, what is infinite in terms of resource or your own resourcefulness within that same capacity, it's it is a very almost like a like wow, I don't have to put so much energy towards that, and I appreciate the energy siphoning that is required to uphold all of that tension about what's going on in the world. But even if you say I'm not really concerned about what's going on in the world, I'm just concerned about making shit tons of money. And you're like, okay, but now I'm working my freckle off every single day, and I'm taking every call and I'm answering every email, and I'm up till 10 o'clock at night, and I'm waking up at 5:30 in the morning. It's everything from your health, like this whole sort of get up at 4 a.m. and I'm straight into the ice bath. And then at 4:15, I'm doing breath work. And then at 4:40, I'm filling out my fucking gratitude journal. And it's just this whole, 19-hour day of like killing it in the world. It has a cost, it has a price. And I think a lot of people buy into whatever the world's selling them without kind of first understanding how they work, how they're what are their values? Like one of your most recent videos on values is it was tremendously beneficial even for me, and I've taught on values, like it's just like it makes things make sense, and all of a sudden you can go, fuck, I'm giving away so much of my precious resource, which is time and energy, and I'm just giving it away willy-nilly to whoever the fuck wants it. And then I wonder why I'm tired and I'm lethargic, and I sit down for 5 minutes and I fall asleep, and I can't pay attention. As a 48-year-old man, I'm addicted to my phone and all this kind of stuff. You're like, man, what the fuck is wrong with me? So yeah, I'm totally with you there.
Yo, I think you articulated that really well, because that's how, there's so many traps. But the thing is it's actually really easy, I find, but it's not, sorry, other way around. It's really simple, but it's not really easy, because once people get out of this idea of the world and the government and everyone's against them and they're a bit of a victim and they're in fight mode, once
Mm.
you get out of that, there's still yourself to deal with, because you have so many imprints and programs and negative belief systems and self sabotage that you've now got to handle that government, because that's controlling your mind. That's controlling how you think, feel, act, and more importantly, react. Most people are just in reaction almost all of the time. And
Yeah.
then they're reactive to their kids and their wife and their coworkers and whatever as well, because they're in reactive mode. So
Mm.
it can take a little while, but what you have to give up in order to get to know yourself to a deeper level is fear. Fear of losing everybody, fear of losing all your money, fear of people thinking you're just like a twat. Like you have to give that up. And once you give that up, I won't say you're totally free. And I'm not saying like I'm like all the way down the end of having done that. I've just done it to a degree where I'm past the initial stages of it. Definitely by no means a master. Like I consider myself a teacher at the moment. Teachers aren't masters. If you're a master, you're not teaching. so, but I've gone down further than, people who may want to learn, and that's why I teach. So that's where if I can just tell people like share a process, like where it sits in things, you have to give up that fear of what people think, expectations that you think others place on you, and therefore then you place as a projection on yourself. And all of that's got to go, or at
Mm.
least minimize. If you can at least tame it a little, like I'm not suggesting also, because when I say things like this without being able to go into a lot of detail, it's not that we're supposed to get rid of everything because oftentimes they never go away. They're parts of us, but the thing is you want to tame it and temper it so that you are in control of it rather in control of you, just like your phone. Like phones aren't bad, but
Mm.
you can control the phone as opposed to the phone having power or control over you. And that's all it is. It's not that we're meant to have no programs,
Yeah.
no ego, no illusions, no nothing. It's like that's not going to happen in this lifetime, but we can have more control over it.
Which is in essence self-mastery, right? Like we're just talking about if you can at least think that my thoughts are not me and my emotions are not me, and this phone is not in control, and I have an ability to control how I think, feel, and act, but also how I heal, how I process emotions, how I interpret events. I mean, you're always in a position of diagnosing, understanding of what's going on. I I think that that in itself, that inner standing, as you said before, self-awareness, whatever you want to call it, is like that's self-mastery. That to me is the essence of creating a life by your own design. Am I on the right track?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what helps you to get actually free of things. So everything in the world isn't real, and the world is always trying to draw us back into it. Even
Mm.
if you manage to separate for a little bit, you get some peace. You just get that moment of peace where you're like, oh, actually, everything just feels all right. And then the next minute, you're back into the world. In some way, shape, or form, it's drawing you back in. And what a master would be in a state of is straddling two worlds. They're not drawn into the world, but they haven't exited the world. They're not always just in themselves. Like they're not in a cave meditating the whole time because that's not really living the life you're here for, unless it is for them. I mean, who am I to judge? But for most people, it's not. We do, I think, have work to do here. And that work can be physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And what I find a lot of people don't get, they fixate on one thing, thinking that that's right, and then judging others of what they're doing, for example. And that's not, no one really knows. So what the whole thing is, if it's coming from a deeper feeling within yourself, then it's at least in the right direction, at the very minimum. So
Mm.
beyond feeling's real, but feelings then become emotions. And there's a big subtlety between feeling and emotion. Emotion isn't real. Emotion's not yours. Same with, like you said, most of the thoughts, they're not yours, but they come from a deeper feeling. It's actually funny because I was speaking to Luke Balky, who's an astrologer on the Gold Coast.
Yeah.
And so we live not that far from each other now. So we caught up and he asked me, we were talking about movies. And he goes, oh, have you seen Star Wars? Or no, he said something about Star Wars, how it's a masterful thing. I was like, you know what? I've seen The Empire Strikes Back when I was like 6, but I haven't watched any of that as an adult. And since then, there's obviously been prequels and sequels made.
Yeah.
So me and Summer actually were like, "Hey, we've got to do some research here." So we sat down and watched it, and I was actually watching, apart from some poor acting and all the other stuff, but the essence of the message is so profound. I actually can't believe that they managed to put that into a movie format,
Mm.
insofar as separating feeling from thought and emotion, separating this idea of light and dark and what it really is and what it really means, and the force, which is like
Yeah.
just chi and life force and stuff. It's
Yeah.
like it's if yeah, I was kind of surprised to be honest that they managed to put that into a movie format back then in the 70s.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's heaps of movies like that where it's all interwoven into the messaging, but I mean, you've got to be conscious enough to kind of decipher that as well, right? But
Absolutely.
yeah, I agree. So I'm curious, with like, what pulls you undone? Like I know for myself, I can certainly go off the rails, and to me, it's that sort of basic analogy of a plane's never really on track. It's always having to be course corrected.
Hmm.
I find that that's a large part of my life. It's larger than what I thought I would like to admit. Is pulling myself back into line, making sure that I am congruent with the things that I say, do, and feel. particularly around my children, my partner, like, that's sort of the stuff that makes me come undone the most. Money was a huge one, but what pulls you off track?
Good question, really good question. And everybody is the same. I don't think anyone has something that doesn't. Uh, what pulls me off track? It's still like a sense of righteousness where something I can't. So because I lost my energy, so I'll tell you how I'll explain this. Okay, so everybody's got their shadows. And shadows are kind of like the unmet part of the unconscious that's there because of wounds that you have. And every single human being on earth carries a wound coming into their incarnation, let alone what they develop through their 0 to 3 year old. And then, the early childhood and whatever. So we all come in wounded. That's one of the main purposes of this life is to manage to heal that wound. So we all also have these shadow components of us that rule us unconsciously. And this is the trick that we can play on ourselves is when people give up on life because they realize that the world's kind of hard. So then they develop a new persona for themselves. And this is like natural law 101 failing by developing a persona for yourself because it's now you're the same person. You're probably worse, but you put on a persona that dresses different, speaks different. You're part of an ashram now. So you are cutting yourself off from the world, thinking that you're protecting yourself, but you're just now in a tighter prison with these demons that are just, there to eat you kind of thing. So you kind of like failed. But what happens is people think that they're outside of their control mechanisms because they're not exposed to anything that can bring it out or mirror it back. That's why close relationships and family is the biggest teacher because you can be pretty calm and collected around, at a seminar where people might be heckling you in that, but you're the guy on stage and whatever. It's really easy to handle people. But then you get tired and everything, and then you get home and someone pisses you off. And it's like, that's when it's harder to be the same cool, calm, collected leader, expert, authority, or whatever in that place where you actually are confronted and faced with something where no one's there to just be like, you're the guy, and you're not doing it for yourself. So that's where most people will come undone. And the way through that is to also realize that that's not you. And you're not going to die as a result of giving in to something that you feel is unjust. The reason I say that is because what most people are driven by in reactivity, and most people have a shadow of this, is anger. And the anger shadow is also under, like the more subtle part of that is the sadness that underlies that. So what's really happening is we're becoming sad, but we don't recognize that, but we feel anger instead. And we generally feel anger when something we believe is being taken from us. So our peace, our finances, our safety, security, value, our time, especially if you're like me, if you lost your energy and your health, time is of the essence. You don't allow anyone to waste your time anymore because you lost so much of it. And a lot of people are in that position too. So how this plays out, why would people be angry? Well, we came into a world in a timeline that's already pretty like messed up.
Mhm.
Like if you look into, and I don't pretend that I know everything about this, but if you look into how the iterations of how the cycles of the earth and life happen, there have been several resets over time. And if you believe some of the narratives, we had access to better things. There wasn't as much overt control, although I do believe it's always been there. I think the Earth's always been the same. I think it's always the same construct. I think it's always controlled in the same way. But, let's say before the last reset, people had access to better quality soil, buildings that were harmonious rather than disharmonious, electrical grids that were harmonious rather than disharmonious, and etc. So I don't like to talk about that too much because what it can give people is a learned helplessness where they think everything's screwed and we can't be healthy and it's not fair. And I wish I was here in the 1800s. It's like, no, you don't. Or you might have even been and you just don't remember it. Who knows? I don't know. I don't know the answers to any of that.
Yeah.
But what I do know is that we came into a timeline that is going to make you angry by the nature of the timeline that we're in. Then, majority of people didn't have a beautiful home birth and everything. Majority of people were under fluorescent lights, pulled out by someone with a mask, cut off from the umbilical cord, jabbed with something, taken away from the mother, then fed formula, or they're cut out from the mother. They didn't even have a vaginal birth. And then you go into the schooling system, and then, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like there's a lot of reasons. Even if you're not aware of it, you'll carry a shadow of anger, and that's what makes people very reactive. And especially the tighter things become, and the more, let's just say, disharmonious a lot of the frequencies are that are in our world become. It's very hard for people to maintain a sense of groundedness and individuation from that. Now, you can be individuated from those frequency as well. They don't have to harm you. Like, when people are obsessed with all the 4G, 5G, radio waves everywhere and Bluetooth and that, it's like that doesn't have to touch you. Don't worry about it. I I do understand. I will acknowledge that it does affect people, but what I am resolutely firm about is it does not have to. That's a choice. That's an offer.
Mhm.
And the way you become not susceptible to that is to become more of who you are. Because while you're enmeshed in those grids, you are susceptible to that. And when you're leaving yourself and your grids in the place that you're on, you can't hold that very well. So it's very easy to become reactive. So then people will do a lot of work on themselves and personal development, and they'll read more and they'll become more aware, and they'll become more aware of themselves and their tendencies and things. And that's definitely helpful. But there's always going to be that time that you think you've done enough because you do some breath work, or you can quote Plato or something, but then someone's going to do or say something and you just want to ram your fist into their mouth,
Mhm.
or just get angry and just curl up in the corner and just like punch a wall because you just can't like that's a lot of people. Thankfully, I've gotten past that, and I've been in that. Like, I was a angry man for for a long time, but I don't pretend that I don't still have a shadow of anger, and it will come out. But
Yeah,
what tests me now is different from what used to test me. I know this is a long answer, but I'm just trying to give people as much
yeah, keep
insight as I
going.
can. So what used to test me doesn't test me anymore, but I still get tested. And what tests me now is something of a more subtle nature, where I feel that I have been out of alignment with my true self and what put me here. Because it's really easy to get caught up in, I should be more productive today. I got to make more money. I got to do more on the business, or I've got to, do more for my wife, or I've got to, like, whatever. Like, none of that's true, but all of it's true. That's the thing. When you can realize that all of it is true, but also none of it's true, then you can strike the balance. As soon as you
Right.
start going into absolutes, you're almost guaranteed to come undone, because both is an illusion.
Hmm.
And then it's very rare that somebody can hold themselves well when the illusions don't meet the expectation of the projection of what it should be or what it is that you're doing. It's
Mm.
not valued the way you thought. So then you feel you've been taken from. That was a waste of time and energy, or that's not fair or just or whatever. And that's what gets most people. What
Yeah.
used to always get me is road rage.
Is that right?
Yeah, I can't handle it when somebody is I'm way better at it now. I just don't I still maybe need more patience, but I can be driving behind someone who's going really slow, and I'll give them much more patience than I used to. And I'll give them some time, and I'm like, you'll realize that you're going. I give them time to realize they're going well below the speed limit. They
Mhm.
could very easily pull over or slow down and wave me around, so I don't have to do a dangerous kind of an overtake and get into my angry mode.
Mhm.
But if they just are like not with it and that, I'll still overtake them, but it's not with anger. And they're not even there. And this is how, if for anyone listening, you can catch yourself if you're getting past what used to rule you, is that what I would do is I would either look as I went past, or I'd look in the rearview mirror and make sure that they saw what I did or whatever, look for a reaction or whatever it is. Whereas now I just do it as efficiently and safely as I can. I don't want to disrupt them at all, but also don't care about them. So
Mm.
it's not, I don't have anything in my field that is determined or controlled or governed by them. And I'll overtake and I'll just keep going to whatever I was doing. My heart rate doesn't get up, and it used to. You get that little bit of adrenaline. Maybe no one can relate to that, but it's just,
I
if
think
you
a lot
were,
of people can relate.
yeah, okay. So
Yeah,
if
yeah.
so just imagine you're not like that, and maybe you're a woman or something, and imagine though that you are in a situation where somebody's like gossiping or saying something about you or whatever, and you would normally go to something. You would normally have a reaction. You think a certain way, you start acting a certain way, your body physiologically responds a certain way. When it starts responding differently, you know you are on the way out of that control mechanism that was binding you and your nervous system. So it's going to be different for everybody. Some people can sit behind someone doing 40 below the limit all day and they don't care. They're like, this is cruisy. And I'm like, no, we all have an agreement that we, at least do your best to do the speed limit. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So it
Well,
depends on how you see things. But
Do you find,
Yeah.
Tom, like, am I hearing correctly that when you go off the rails, are you more angry at yourself because you let your guard down?
Oh, that's a good question. What can you expand on that? What do you mean let my guard down? As in failed
Um,
myself or became more
Yeah,
open?
you failed yourself. You should know better. You teach on this, but then you just in that moment you forgot who you are, and so then you get dirty on yourself for the fact that you let something so trivial as to someone doing 55 in a 70 zone get to you in that moment. That's how I interpreted some of what you said was more of a not self-loathing, but you get upset with yourself that you let your guard down for that moment and you were weak in that moment. But then you also said that is also true and also not real and untrue at the same time. Like, and I don't know if I'm on track
Yeah.
or not.
Yeah, no, you are. Yeah, I know. I just because when I hear let my guard down, I take that as like I become less guarded and less, and I'm more open to people and things. I know what you're saying. I guess it's a complex answer because uh, there have been times, for example, where I have just preoccupied myself with something else and not bothered that somebody was driving really slowly and realized that life had put that in front of me for a reason. And when I showed that I had patience and I was okay with just like live and let live, like let be what is being, that something I noticed something either on the road or something that I wouldn't have seen otherwise. And the timing of it was met because of going with the flow of
Yeah.
what was going on. But then there are times, this is really interesting because there are times when I'll do that and then I realize I've been pretending. And this is another lesson that we share a lot about is acting,
Mhm.
pretending, and performing because none of those are the real things. And I'm performing or acting as somebody who is exercising patience. But a deeper part of me is actually feeling like this, whoever this is, they're causing it is actually inequitable under natural law. Like this is actually not right what they're doing. Some people are driving slowly and there's actually not a problem with it. Other people are driving slowly and they're either dangerous, they might be on drugs, and I'm not going to sit behind someone on drugs and whatever. And maybe if I zoom past them, it'll wake them up and they'll realize that, oh shit, I'm like asleep or something. So there are other times where some feeling will come up where I feel like I failed myself because I didn't act. And I
Mm.
think a lot of people might have felt that throughout 2020 to 2023 or four or whatever, where they
Yeah.
kind of felt like something in them just didn't sit right because they didn't say something or they didn't do something and they knew they should have, but they glossed over it and they rationalized it by saying like, well, other people are doing that, so I don't have to, or it's not my place to interfere, or it's not, a patient man with no ego wouldn't do that. You know what I
Mm.
mean? You see how fine the line is? Because you could just be supremely egoic, interfering and using your mouth to speak about stuff, and it's not the right thing to do. You
Yeah.
could be extremely like modest and not say anything because it's like that's the right thing to do, but you're now just talking about the exact same illusion on opposite ends of the spectrum. Whereas the truth is in the balance point in the middle, like the 0 point, and it's really hard for a lot of people to find that. So what I've learned in my own experience is that the way you know that you found it is that you don't have a residual one way or the other, and that's when you realize neither end is real, but you've done the only real thing.
Mm.
And that's like a really profound thing to come across that, probably a lot of people don't come across very often.
Yeah.
But the more you become aware of that and look for that, so you're looking more for the like how this inner compass, which we call inner authority, how well is that developing versus how much you're trying to prove something or be something in the world, which in and of itself is not really quote unquote real. By the
Mm.
way, that's why it's called reality, I believe, because when you break down the etymology of the words, which I do in my talks, anything that has re in front of it is not the first thing. Like if you rewind a movie or reheat food or replay something, it's not the first or the thing. It's like the do over.
Yeah.
So I see reality as the do-over. That's why I think people call it the hologram, the simulation, or like whatever. Yeah, I don't think it's real.
Yeah. Wow. We'll touch on that in a sec. So I guess something that comes to mind is like the challenging part about when I hear you speak about natural law and the offer that's been presented to you. I think, and in particular in relation to what you said about what cause and effect you could have had in that any given moment. And if we talk about COVID, for example, it's like, yeah, I think a lot of people regret not instinctually acting upon their guttural, whatever feeling about what was going on and acting in accordance with that, as opposed to listening to some other outside influence, which was affecting their decision-making process. Okay. So they took something, they said something, they whatever that may be, and there's a result of that. The other part of it for me is like when I think about a very recent conversation, which I mentioned quite a lot in passing in terms of conversations like this, is a mate of mine's brother, his daughter committed suicide around Christmas. And I remember speaking to his brother about it about 6 months before, and he was saying how he was having complications with his daughter. And so in that time, I chose not to say anything, and I have regret about it because I feel like perhaps if I was listening to my intuition at that time, I would have said, hey, listen, your daughter's crying out for attention. She needs a father that's going to um, hold her close and just to be there for her. And maybe the outcome of her not being on this earth anymore would have been different. And maybe that's a result of what I didn't say in that moment. So I'll leave you with that just for a sec. And then the other part of it is like part of your natural law and the things that you speak about with respect to the goings on of the world is it causes sometimes a state of I don't know, like disgust, uneasiness, confusion, because you see things that are going on in the world. And like you said before, like we can, it's not that we don't acknowledge that this phone's emitting electromagnetic frequencies and radiation and it's affecting my being. We can't not acknowledge that they're spraying shit in the skies, that there's shit in our water, that they're poisoning our foods and soil. And also, they're creating wars and they're fucking the monetary system and they're, like, there's all of these wrongdoings. And you're like, if natural law was something that you attest to having a great life, why the fuck are these people continually doing the things that they're doing if natural law exists in that same capacity? Like they're living in the same or similar timeline. I'm probably waning a little bit in terms of like my understanding because it's probably a little bit of ignorance as to the full in-depth of natural law and how it works. But I think you get the gist of what I'm saying.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Can I just clarify?
Yeah.
So it sounds like you're talking about like good and evil, in which case it's just the way that nature is that there's equal light and dark. So there has to exist. So then you're talking about duality, and duality is not really the real nature of things, but also there is duality. So there is that. But then are you kind of saying how did they get away with it? I think that's more what you're asking. It's like everybody can understand there's evil in the world, but how do they get away with that? Is that more what you're
Is
asking?
Yeah, I guess so. And I guess that was a very enmeshed like type of question, an overarching theme of I'm trying to do my little part in Adrian's world to make sure that I'm the best version of myself.
Hmm.
This is the things that I teach in my own courses and programs and teachings and stuff like that. When I was doing workshops and all the rest of it, it's kind of what I was promoting. So um, at the same time, it's like, let's say we just take it to a local level. There's evil going on all of the time. So let's not not ignore the fact that there's a war going on and there's genocide and there's a lot of people dying. Like in my hometown, I mean, there's just, people are getting killed and injured and sexually abused. I mean, like it happens all the time. So
Yeah.
they live in the same environment as what I do under the same laws that you are talking about. So I don't know if there's a question in it, but it's almost
No, I
like
understand what you're talking
you
about.
understand what I'm
Definitely.
saying.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have more in-depth answers in some of the live streams I've done, which are on my YouTube, which I can link you to those videos. But
That'd be great.
just to give an idea of it. So you actually started answering your own question the way, because what you said is on the world stage, and the world is a stage, and the stage is there so that it draws by an offer, doesn't have to, everybody on earth onto the stage to perform in the capacity of the character that's written for them. So they're like an extra, is the way I describe it in our course. It's like extras generally don't have a lot of say. They definitely don't have any rights. You get paid, or maybe don't get paid, or don't get paid your worth. You're told what to do. Here, you got to stand here for 12 hours. You don't get a lunch break. Hold this. That kind of like, it's not really, and that's how most people feel. They're like, if the wind goes, like, I'm getting pushed and pulled around. That's how most people feel. They feel drained from that. Now, that's not the way that the world actually is. That's just the way that the programs work. And people haven't learned how to stand on their own 2 feet yet. So, what's going on in, let's say, Iran right now doesn't actually have any bearing on me and who I am right now. Now, it's really tempting to feel like you should care, you should do something like, but if you don't care or don't do anything, that would be bad and evil and wrong, right?
Mm.
But that's the performative surface level thing where it allows you to think you're doing something like honorable and moral by caring about it, because it then takes away you having to do that closer to home, which is much harder to do. Now, some people do both, and that's great, but I'm talking about the majority of people. So if people paid more attention to themselves, how they govern themselves and their inner authority, being like exactly what you said, being as good as you can be in the world, because unfortunately, as much as you might want to try, no one's going to change the world. It's not meant to be changed in that way. The only way you can actually affect change is by being the best version of yourself. And then that being in the world is something that actually can change part of the fabric of reality. But until then, you're acting from programs. Like you're literally feeding into that system and that thing that you think is evil and immoral, because you're not occupying who you are. So while you then exit yourself further and your family or the land that you're on to try to like be the man and change the world and be a leader and be a hero and all that, you're actually making that problem worse, because you're not doing the only thing that you can do that will actually make a change there. So it's a lot of it is counterintuitive, but that's only because we're programmed with inversions. So it's not actually counterintuitive, it's actually intuitive. But everything is so inverted in the world on the world stage that we think that that's now counterintuitive. So a lot of what I help teach people is to revert the inversions, because once you can do that, you start just seeing things for what they really are. So then continuing from that, is how moral are you? No, really, like how moral are you really? For example, like let's just speak as men here. Like if you're out and about and you see like 20 beautiful women walking around and you're a married man with kids, does your attention at all go to any of those women? Like you don't have to, a lot of people think cheating on their wife is going and sleeping with the secretary, but even just having a thought about like, oh, she's like having some kind of impulse towards somebody for half a second, you cheated on your wife.
Yeah.
And most men are so heavily programmed by, and it's not anyone's fault because it is programmed. Like growing up as a boy in Australia or America or the UK, you objectify beauty. You don't celebrate beauty, you objectify it, and it's a sexual thing as opposed. So it's all kidney led. So when it is going to go way too deep for people to do in a podcast, but then you're getting into the meridians and the organ systems, which each all relate to an alchemical, not only a cell salt, but a star system. And this is how things are governed on the like properly outside of the stage, and then they create the stage. So as you start to self-master, you're already doing more in the world than the influencer with 10 million followers who just goes, support Iran or support the troops,
Yeah.
support the gays.
Yeah.
None of that stuff does anything. It actually all contributes to the evil. And why? Because evil is deception. So while you're acting in the image of deception, you are upholding the deception. Only when you're starting to move out of deception and act in the image or create and be in the image of what created you, can you actually be moral? And just to finish up this topic is, which you can, by the way, if you want to keep talking about it, but just is the analogy I always give people is how people think that bacteria and fungus and that are the enemy,
Mhm.
but they're only there because you're not occupying yourself in your full capacity. So they're there to do the job that you're not doing. They're just cleaning things up. And likewise, the world is the way it is because people aren't moral enough. But that's what it comes down to. We can easily point the finger. That's immoral. That's a pedophile. That's a this. They shouldn't be doing wars and dropping bombs. It's like, yeah, that's true. I'm not arguing with that. That is absolutely true. But that's happening because you're not moral. So if you take it away from the world stage, which you can't change because it's so like it's beyond what one mind can take in, you now got to ask yourself, how moral am I? And exactly like you said, I've seen, because I've been in these underworlds and that, like I know what goes on in every town in Australia.
Mhm.
like behind closed doors, under the streets, in all these buildings and that are around. Like there's pedophilia running rife there. There's the destruction of innocence and morality right on your doorstep, and no one wants to do anything about it because it's way easier to point the finger at Trump and Iran and Iraq and bombs and this and that and chemicals. It's just I'm not saying that those things aren't um,
I know what
wrong
you're saying.
or that
Yeah.
they don't have an effect, but you just can't change it. So um,
So
I would say,
on that though, like is how do you must get pushback with there's things that are within your control and things that aren't. And I see like when people talk about we're in a spiritual war, I see spirituality as what's right in front of you. I don't know if I'm wrong about that, but I a lot of people see spirituality, I think, as a 30,000 foot view of the world. I see it as not an adjective, but a verb. Like it's a doing word, right? It's something that I'm dealing with the problems or the challenges or like whatever it is in front of me all of the time. So that's my version of spirituality. Where was I going with this? Um,
well, that's not wrong, by the way. So yeah,
okay, well that's good.
yeah.
Um, but I guess I think what I was leading into is like, if there's nothing that I can do to change the world, do you get pushback on? Because you said a little while ago, I'm not quite sure what we're talking about, but you mentioned like we are born into this world with like a generational trauma and you know a past life and all of these things. So then to what degree do I have any control at all to the outcome of what I'm thinking I'm trying to do? Like, and another side note is like during COVID in 2020, Tom, I used to run events and I would tell people, you are the author of your own story. You create your destiny, right? And, I just choose whatever the fuck I want to do and I don't conform to anything. I've never had a job since I was like 19 years of age, right? And until 2020, when the government said you can't operate because you're not essential, right? And you can't go into this store because you're not vaccinated and like all of these things. And then I realized, hey, I'm not in control of my world at all. I don't have any bearing on in the author of my own story. These fucking guys can just come in and take away everything that I think I own, which is largely an illusion. My house belonged to the bank. My business belonged to the bank. Anyone and everything that could come after me for money did. And I just like, what the fuck am I doing? I just pissed away 25 years of work in like 6 months.
hmm Yeah, well, it's yeah, so like I say, like explaining a lot of this would take more time than we have, but there are so many just simple basic laws that help people to understand how and why these things happen. I guess also to answer this, it's kind of like what we were talking about before, where if you were upholding full morality for yourself in your own household, there'd be no pedophilia, there'd be no poisons in your garden. So when you can take that and then extrapolate it out, but if you're lazy and if you're like inconsistent with things, you don't really know who you are, you're not really actually that moral, then heaps of weird stuff can go on in your own household, and that's why it happens in the world. So if you had, let's say, so one of those things is debt. Now, debt's not a bad thing. In the Bible, for example, it says stay out of mammon, like stay out of debt. Don't, it's the offer of the beast kind of thing. Like don't get debt. Why? Because if you go about it in a way that's not really moral or equitable, then bad shit can happen, which you experience. Now, that doesn't mean you're not a moral man, for example, but it just means like there's illusions around what you might be doing in order to get that in the first place. And this is where people are at. They don't quite understand things. You could tell me the answer to this in retrospect, but go back 10, 20 years, you couldn't tell me this. That's the difference, is that we only know what we know. And sometimes we've got to go through what we perceive to be lost to learn these deeper lessons of life. So it's not really a harm. It seems like it, but it's not. It just propels you into something that's actually way better, beyond all that sort of stuff. But debt can be totally fine to have. But like I said before, it's not the action. It's not what you do. It's what goes into it. Like why? Why did you get debt? Was it out of greed? Was it out of fear? Was it out of trying to cut corners? Or was it to do something that is it's there's like a humility to it. Like it's I don't need debt, I don't want debt, but if I take this debt, it will allow A, B, and C to happen, and there's smarter ways to go about it. So, for example, really wealthy people all live off of debt. And that's because if you in the monetary system, the way it's set up is that debt's not taxable. So what they'll often do is, yeah, you have to have some money in the first place, but then they park that in trust and they put assets in it and borrow against the assets, and they don't pay any tax. And also, no one can take it from them. So that's smart debt. But borrowing for, I forget the term. There's like a financial term for it. It's borrowing for something else. It's like whatever you don't have, like credit cards, mortgages, car loans, that kind of thing. That's consumer debt. That's bad debt.
Yeah.
And then even borrowing like 100K to start a business, you might have the good intentions. It's all moral. It's all for the right reasons. But could you have done that a different way? Yeah, were you going about it in a way that wasn't quite like at what level or depth within the being did that come from? And it's not good or bad, by the way, but for most people, it's coming just from the top of the dome here. It's like, if I make this, I'll make this. If I make this product, I'll make this money or I'll serve these people. And it's just all like up here.
Yeah.
And almost none of it comes from at least down to here, which is more of a feeling thing. And then, of course, you got a lot further down, which is like where the soul resides. And if it's coming from there, nothing bad will happen.
Mhm.
But when it's all coming from this thought mind area and it's limited by what you know, that's why like some people can't understand. Like, but why did bad shit happen to me? I'm not a bad person. And it's like, yeah, that's all right. And it's not bad. Like, don't feel shame or guilt about it. You didn't do the wrong thing. It's just that you didn't know. You didn't know any better. You acted in the capacity of what you knew, but you didn't know enough. And that's fine. Like, we all do that. I've done that a million times. But every time that I got spanked by life, I took it as a lesson. I was like, okay, so that wasn't what I was meant to be doing anyway. So if you stop projecting outwards and become a victim to things and you start just allowing it's like, all right, that hurt, but I'll dust myself off. Like why did that happen? Like what's the reason? Or what's the reason this dude is like slowing me down in front of me? You know, like what's the reason? What's the reason? It's more introspective. There's questions which are part of natural law and there's a humility to it. And you go within a little and then you're like, okay, there's something else will click. It's more subtle, but once you learn how to listen to those subtleties, it's like pretty hard to be perturbed by the world.
Sure. Well, what you were saying before, though, Tom, is like, how much of the world do you think is predetermined, and how much control do you have within that program, for want of a better word?
So this is going to be another like half answer. While you're not occupying who you are, none of it's changeable. It's all pre-programmed and predetermined. As you start to unlock elements of yourself that come from getting to know who you are, all of it's mutable. So it's none and it's all. The question is, where do you sit in that spectrum?
Okay. Can you give me an example or break that down just a little bit further
Oh
without
yeah, yeah, for
having
sure.
to?
So okay, so let's say one of the I don't mind sharing this because it's like I think I'm born this way and we all have a different makeup. We all have a different blueprint. We have different tendencies. I think most kids are born with divergent thought. I definitely have it. I still have it, but it's usually weaned out of people through spending up at least 5 years in the Prussian educational system. You don't have divergent thought anymore.
Mhm.
And divergent thought's really simple. The way I usually illustrate it is like, if I might ask a question and I go, hey, Adrian, how many ways can you use a pen? And you'll give me an answer. And the answer is based on the construct of a pen. You're probably thinking this, but that's not necessarily what a pen is. It's like, what kind of pen? How big is it? What's it made of? What does it do? Like all those thoughts would come to mind first rather than a construct of what a pen is. So if you go to the construct of the agreed construct of a pen, I can determine your outcome down to a 0.000001% outcome, which means it's predictable and I can control that based on the response I know you'll have to my input. So the people that are authoring, which are the authorities in the world, are the ones putting in the predictive input and they know what's going to come out the other end. But what they don't account for and can never account for is people who are individuating from that controlled mind and have divergent thought because they can't control that. So those people actually are able to affect a change in the reality. They don't have a programmed, predetermined outcome. They have a soul path, which is
Mm.
based on their astrology, their cosmology, their blueprint, their familial ancestry. That all determines, like, I'm never going to be a ballerina. So I came into this world as a man with a certain stature, a certain abilities and non-abilities, and I'm not going to be a female ballerina. Like I'm just not. So yes, I have a relatively predetermined outcome, but within that, I have a lot of freedom of how that expresses, which is determined by how well I keep getting to get to know myself and stop fixating on the world. But while I fixate on the world and trying to be something and trying to be this and that and live up to constructs, illusions, egregores, spells, and my own projections of my own persona of what that is, I'm never going to be anything other than a predictable outcome that anybody who writes a stronger story than mine is able to just control me. So when you said before too, you used to say to people in seminars, you are the author, you just write it however you want. That is true. There's nothing wrong with what you were saying because it's inherently true. But what will happen is for people who have got down to a deeper part of where that authoring comes from, they weren't told they couldn't go to work. They didn't have a business closed down. They weren't stopped from crossing borders. Whereas if that story is coming from what is already pre-written in them, it's still a predictable, programmable outcome. Does that make sense? It's like
Yeah, absolutely.
it always comes down to where it's coming from and why. It's not the thing on the surface, but it's inherently true. That's
Mm,
why author is the first half of the word of authority. Whoever authors is the authority. So
mm,
what happens is we can have a perfectly strong story and we're acting in the capacity and life shows up in that capacity. And we're like, yes, this is my story. Life is showing me that this is my story.
yeah.
But when you then come into line with another story and that story happens to be way stronger than yours, well, unfortunately, your story gets like, it's the lesser of equals in that respect. And then, for example, just to use your story as an example, when you were told that you had to have stuff closed down, you essentially accepted that offer, which means that it wasn't actually a foregone conclusion, but you allowed that to be because you started to act in that capacity, mainly because no one told you any different, which is not your fault. So then you give into illusion and fear and you start then down regulating everything and not really acting in the full capacity. Now, that
Mm,
also doesn't mean when I say things like that, because I know that people are like, what are you talking about? That doesn't mean it's easy. That doesn't mean you just like write the story on your vision board and then the government goes away. It doesn't work like that.
agree. Yeah.
It can be super, super hard, like the hardest thing you've done. Like trying to stop yourself from reacting when someone's in your face, that normally you just would make you riled up, like
Yeah.
it's a lot of work. And I don't pull any punches when I explain that to people. It's not easy. It's not like you just do it and it happens like The Secret. Like I'll just think that there's no chemtrails and then the government leaves me alone. It's like good luck in life if
But
that's
that
what you
was
think.
my test. That was my test. I feel like
Yeah.
if I was going to get a lesson out of life, it was like, oh, so you tell people you're the author of your own story. Well, that's fine. Let's just show up as the authority that's telling you that that is not the case and see how you respond. And I think to what we were talking about before, I can't remember if we are talking about this off air or on air, but I definitely felt uh, I let myself down. Like I was a pussy, It's just like I didn't stand my ground. I knew it was wrong. I didn't stand my ground. I had conviction in my words, but it wasn't enough. And like you said, my story become, second best in that moment
Mm.
until it wasn't, until I just had enough. And I think I probably had to lose everything in order to realize that everything that I thought was of value really wasn't. And like I know a lot of people, well, I shouldn't say a lot, but I've heard of people who were $10,000 in debt and decided to remove themselves from this planet as a result of the fear and worry and shame and guilt that they had with that level of debt. Whereas I've lost millions in revenue and hundreds of thousands of dollars in terms of dollar terms. But I can tell you hand on heart, I never got close to wanting to kill myself.
Yeah.
Like so it was at that moment where it's just like I literally have nothing. Like when I decided to leave my marriage and things like that, a heartbreaking moment for me was like I went and moved in with my mum. I was like 42 and I went and moved in with my mum and everything that I owned, Tom, that I felt was of value to me fit in my ute. My ute's a two-door, like a dual cab ute. So everything fit in the front seat and then the little cab at the back. That was a value. And I just walked in and fucking burst into tears because it's just like my whole life is in that fucking truck. Everything that I think is dear to me is in there, and that's all I have. This is all I am. So
Yeah.
it was almost liberating. Like it was as harmful and as hurtful as it was at that time. It was liberating. It's like I relinquished the fear or the grip that life had on me as to what it means to lose money or lose material possessions or those sorts of things. So I just had nothing.
Totally. And all those things in your ute weren't you anyway. Like that's the thing. And what was you just said something that's really important is that while some people, like took themselves out over 10 grand, you were like, 10 times that in the whole but you never entertained that thought. And that's the difference between somebody who so you know who you are to a way deeper level than somebody who because the illusion is so strong with people like that.
Oh,
And that's the majority of people on Earth, and that's why the majority of people on Earth are so heavily controlled as the masses. And other people who are quote unquote waking up are looking at them going, "Why are you boosting yourself? Why are you watching the news? Like you still because you can start to see more clearly, but you can't see everything yet. But you're just like, why? Why are so many people? And you just see it's the majority of people, and that's just the way it's always been.
yeah.
One of the things that is really important, it's why I called my new offerings the humble. It all comes under the banner of the humble kingdom, is
Mhm.
because like I'll give you an example. I went when the border was shut on between Gold Coast and Queensland and New South Wales back in 2021, whatever that was.
Yep.
I crossed that many times in different ways. I flew without masks and got upgrades. I never even got. Not only did I not get hassled, I got given upgrades on the flight and work done for me. I was treated really well. However, if I went to the border or into the airport live streaming, telling everyone like you don't need to listen to this bullshit, it's all bullshit, you just do this, and I would have got locked up, guaranteed. No matter how much I know the laws, I
Mhm.
guarantee you I would have got the rough end of the stick and a really rough end of the stick at that. I guarantee it because there was no humility with it. So when you are acting in the capacity of what's right, it doesn't speak loudly. It has nothing to defend. It has nothing to explain. It doesn't even need to be heard or seen or met or validated by anything else because it's coming from a place that is already true. So there's
Mm.
a maxim that says truth is held as self-evident, which is then written into constitutions, for example. And that's all it is. It's just a standing. It's like you are that. You don't have to say it. You already are it. So that's the difference. If I had have lacked humility and tried to prove a point and not even just prove it to myself or prove it to a police or a customs officer or an airport staff, I would have not gone well. And especially if I tried to prove it to like the people of Australia or my audience, like, man, that would have just gone so badly. But I didn't have anything bad happen to me over that entire time, despite not doing anything that I was told to do, getting death threats because of the media and the whatever else, and everything worked out extremely well and nothing bad. Like, it's not that there was no challenges. That's the other thing. Like it's not like everything was easy breezy. I did lose things in other ways,
Sure.
and I went through hardship in other ways, but it's just one of those things. I never like you. I never thought of just quitting. I
Mm.
never thought I was doing the wrong thing. I didn't doubt for a second. And that's how you know. That's that inner feeling. It's just like that inner feeling is God's voice speaking through you. It's not the illusions. It's not the everything else. The voice in the back of your head can be an illusion, but that really subtle thing, like the one just going, oh, do another live stream, just tell them to all, it's
Yeah.
like that's not the one to listen to. But if it's a subtle feeling, and my subtle feeling often tells me, just like, what's the point of posting on social media? And I'll go a month or two. Can't remember if we're on air or off air, but like I said, if you listen to the narrative about how to succeed with an online business and that you got to post 4 times a day, and I'm like, no way, that'd be a prison to me. I'd rather not. I'd rather work digging ditches for the council than do that. I'm not doing that. I don't
Yeah.
hashtag anything. I don't do any promotion for it. I just do it, and it is what it is, and it works out really well.
Yeah.
So I just
Well,
think
that's
that
what
you
we were
got to.
talking about before. Like it was just that's the tug of war between for me personally, I have an interest in making a difference and in leaving the world a better place than what I found it. I feel like there's certain gifts that I have that are being bestowed upon me, and to maybe not express them in this format is would be a waste. Would be considered perhaps a like a waste of talent, I suppose. So
Yep.
but then at the same time, I think that the medium is so strong at times where, yeah, you can Google it or YouTube, like how to be successful online, and it's, yeah, post across several platforms and do it
Yeah.
multiple times per day and curate, your life's events and all that kind of stuff, which is um, exhausting. But at the same time, it's very, I don't know what the word is, sexy. It's kind of like you
Good
get
word
that.
for it. Good word. That's like, I would never have picked that word, but that word actually covers all of it to a T. That's great.
It does, doesn't it? And for a somewhat egotistical male, like it feeds right into my um want to be liked. You know what I mean? So that's its whole other issue that I have dealt with over the time. But I feel like now it's less of a burden, and I realize now, even within my marriage and with my relationship with my kids, how it had an impact on how I related to them, and I used to just bypass it like this is just the way business is done now. So anyway, I digress.
But that was cool though. That was a really good point, and I think it's super important that if a lot of people are struggling, they're in that tug of war, they're in a push pull. So I think it's
Yeah.
good for people to hear, people like yourself talk. And what I wanted to say before though, actually, because I think it's important, and I think you've come to this without maybe realizing it.
Mm.
When I was 20, or 22, I think I was going to write a book because I thought I knew everything, and and I thought everyone else was retarded, and and I will write a book still. And the funny thing is that everything that was in that book, I'd still write now.
Yeah,
Okay,
wow.
so I did know back then when I was 22 the answers to some of the things that I've proven several times over since then. But here's the thing: is that I came across a quote from an elderly author, and he said this. He goes, "The world needs books, doesn't necessarily need your book."
Oof.
So when I sat with that, I was like, okay, cool. So do I need to write this, and where's it coming from? Because I was actually starting to learn about the Tao, which is the Tao Te Ching at that point.
Mhm.
And I was starting to learn like most of what I was doing was just this like egoic 21, 22-year old who thinks he knows everything. And it was right at the point that I was starting to get sick as well. And it
Mm.
wasn't because I didn't know anything about nutrition and health and the body and all that. I knew heaps about it, to be honest, because I was academically very bright and I'd learnt through a wide variety of sources in the system, out of the system. And I
Mhm.
just saw all of these people around me writing books and becoming famous and rich in that. And I'm like, not only do you not know what you're talking about, that's actually outright wrong. And that's like, but I also didn't know I didn't know at that time how publishing houses work, who they put in the spotlight, why certain messages are allowed to proliferate. And I'm like, I know several people who can prove that wrong. No one's putting them on a podcast.
Yeah.
No one's got them on a book sort of deal. Like no one will talk to them. I'm like, why aren't they on the news? And then I'm like, oh, that's right, because it's all controlled. But anyway, so
Yeah.
I sat with that quote and I was like, okay, I do feel like but I don't really feel like it's coming from a place where I'm righteous and I think I'm right. So maybe I shouldn't write it. Now,
Mm.
25 years later or whatever, I'm like, there's almost nothing that I would change in writing a book of a similar thing. Obviously, I've learned more since then and that would be in it, but the essence of it is still the same. But it's interesting, right? Because I wasn't wrong. It's just that I thought I was so right. It's
Yeah,
it's so
sure.
subtle. So I think
The
when you
fun
can
part
sit with
is
the
it's
idea of like, I do have like you do have something of value to say. And I do believe that you sat with the idea of not saying it. And when I don't think it's the right thing to do is just go, I've got something to say, I'm not going to say it, and nothing's going to stop me, and the world needs to hear my voice. I'm like, no, it doesn't. That's how you get to be one of those like pumped up influencer type people who just you'll burn out or you'll get bashed or you'll lose everything or like something bad's going to happen. Even if you end up with 10 million followers and everyone loves you, you're going to be depressed because it's
sure.
not actual love. Like there's no actual substance. There's nothing meaningful or tangible that you can put your finger on. It's all just hot air and illusion. And I've seen that happen a lot. Like I'll never say but I've consulted for like really famous and popular people throughout my 20 years in that. And I can tell you, behind closed doors, is what they put out on their thing is way different to what they're doing. Um, you
Of
know,
course. Yeah.
it's like it's night and day different. And people look up to them and they buy their programs and their stuff, thinking that that's like a real life, and it's like not a real life. It's actually the complete opposite.
Yeah.
you couldn't be paid to take their life. That's how bad a lot of it is. Like you couldn't be paid $1 million to live with that amount of depression or unsurety or whatever. And it's
Mm,
all because it's based on illusion. So if you can sit with the world needs to hear my voice, but maybe it doesn't. Like the world needs voices, maybe it doesn't need my voice. And you sit with that and you're humble enough to sit with that, but then there's still a subtle feeling that goes, I should still say this. Then
yes.
whatever that is meant to be, and that should have been said.
Mm. You know, a book title, Everyone Else is Retarded, would probably sell well.
I love it.
Like the subtle art of not giving a fuck. You know, it's got one of those titles that is
Yeah.
you know, alluring in a way. Yeah, look, I agree. I think the come from that it seems like you resolve with that level of thinking is like to what end and for what reasons am I putting this message out? And it goes back to I'm doing this live so I can pump a book up, or I can sell someone into my course, or I can just go on a massive rant and get attention. But then again, you get trapped in that excessive need to be loved, and it's easy to get captured. Like I can see it now with so-called sort of like truthers and patriots of Australia that are getting roped into political parties and rallies and all sorts of shit like that, and their keynote speakers, and you can just see them getting caught in that sort of fame that's built around their identity, and then all of a sudden they're a one trick pony, I guess, if that makes sense. There's no real depth to
Yeah.
what they're doing, and then once they're used to what degree, then that'll be the end of them. I don't see any longevity. Whereas when you come from the position of I want this to last, I want this to have a long gestation in the world at some way, shape, or form. I think the come from then becomes very natural and very purposeful and very meaningful, and it's almost removed of ego and what's to be benefited from the act of, for example, writing a book.
Yeah, well, it's two things, and this is what I talk about a lot. Is you got two worlds, and the hero's journey is all about mastering two worlds. But what it's not telling you about is which worlds they are. And we have the public and the private world, and we have the inner world's what's real, as long as you can get to a close enough part of it beyond the programs. And then you have the world, which is the illusory world, but you're still the way that this life works, as far as I'm aware, and I didn't create it, so I don't know that I know the answer, but it appears that if you try to unplug completely from it, you don't survive very long.
Yeah.
So we need it. We do need to use money. So, like, for example, if you write a book, but you be modest and humble and don't tell anyone about it, what's the point? Like, you
Hmm.
do have to tell people about it, and you
Yeah.
might post 4 times a day, but the question is why and how are you posting 4 times a day? Not the fact that you're posting 4 times a day, it's why and how. For
Mm.
most people, it's propping up the non-self, the fluff, the illusion, but it could be the right organic, natural thing to do that, because it'll reach the people that it then needs to reach. So therefore, doing the live stream and promoting your book, and doing the post and promoting your book and whatever else, that's not the wrong thing to do. Not doing it is pretending, because there's a subtle feeling of like, okay, I've written the book, I know there's an audience for it, I need to tell people that it's available. Then you go, nah, that would be like being an influencer, so I won't do it. That's
Can't
the
do it.
same.
Yeah.
That's the same voice as the one going, I'm the best dude in the world, and I
Agree.
need, you know what I mean?
Yeah, or you can
So
give it away
then,
for free and say like I'm
yeah, I
just
don't even need your money.
need the money. Yeah, that's right. And all of a sudden you're like, I'm the most knowledgeable broke prick that's
Yeah,
going around.
exactly. I know
Yeah.
I've been that guy. I've been that, like, a lot of what I talk about, by the way, I've made all these like I've been that guy, and I'm not like, I can admit that. I'm not ashamed to, like, I didn't know any better at the time, but it's like as the lessons show up and I receive them, then I'm okay with it. If I were to ignore them and just keep acting like that, then I would be ashamed of that. But I'm not, because I learned my lesson, I take the hit and I move on. And
Yeah.
and that's, people just need to know as well. It's okay. Like, it's okay to admit you're wrong. Everyone's wrong at some point. No one's ever right about everything, and sometimes about anything. So as long as you are humbling yourself along the way, and it's just, that's okay. You stop acting in that way. After that, it's fine. Like, everything, life forgives you for that.
Mm.
So there's a quote. I call it a natural law principle, whether it's mine or it's whatever. But it's just, I say that life forgives innocence, but it doesn't forgive ignorance. So while you're just doing your best, but you're being a douchebag, it's all right. But as soon as you realize, even on a subtle level, or it's being mirrored back that you're being a douchebag, but you dig your heels in and continue or amplify that, then that's ignorance, and life punishes that pretty hard in
Right.
different ways. So in line with what I was saying before, if you post 4 times a day or do a live stream to promote your book and it goes for 2 hours, but those 2 hours were necessary, then that's not the egoic form that we were talking about before. That is the voice that needs to be heard, or needs, those are the words that need to be said. But it's
Yeah.
a really subtle thing, and it takes a really, and I'm not there yet either, but would take a really self-aware and self-mastered individual to be able to pick in real time the words, like hearing it for real in real time, like zero latency. These are the words that need to be said, and catching any words that don't need to be said before they exit your mouth. Like that's a self-mastered person, and I'm not, because I find it really difficult to listen to myself back. I don't know if you're the same, but if I
Mm.
were to listen to the live stream that I did 2 nights ago, I would probably, like, if I could, in hindsight, edit it out, there would be words that I definitely wouldn't use, and you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just like, yeah, but
Uh,
it's is what it is. I do my best, and if I realize it wasn't, that I can go, okay, that was unnecessary. That's coming from a place that's not really of true nature. Then I
mm.
learn from it, and I try not to, or I don't do it the next time. That's all you can do.
Yeah, right. I used to always want to watch back everything that I did. Not to edit it, but just to make sure that it it hits my own approval, even post-production, like, or releasing it anyway.
Yep.
I don't know what happened to me in the last 6 months, but I just haven't watched anything. I don't have any desire to, or need, or anything like that. I put it out there, and I let it do its thing, and I don't, yeah, I don't try and sort of
Okay.
control
Well,
any act.
I don't think there's a right and wrong with it. I'm just talking from my how I go about it. So for example, I have obviously watched things back, because if I clip something out of one of my podcasts or streams, I have to have watched it back to do that. And then
Yes.
to edit that down, I'm listening for what words should be in and what shouldn't be in. But I don't make a habit of it. What I go by now is I go by a feeling, because
Mm.
what used to happen when I used to go and do a bunch of live streams, doing all of the height of, I would almost always feel drained after doing a live stream. Like
Yeah.
I'd put in a lot of work, and I
Mhm.
realized that what it was is I was using force. So I was using emotion, and I was using words that weren't necessary. The reason I was doing it probably wasn't a true reason. So it
Yeah.
drained me. So all I do is I go by a feeling. I don't want to hear it back. I don't care what I said. But if I have a subtle feeling, I'm like, yeah, I feel like I did my job, or I did my best, then that's it. I never go and look at how many people liked it or didn't like it or said bad shit.
Mm.
I try to keep up with social media by at least liking comments and replying where it's like necessary, but I don't go based on whether people approved it or didn't approve it. I go based on the feeling I had. And even if like 20 people are like, you're an idiot,
Mm.
I'm like, no, I had a good feeling about that, so thanks, but all good. And but likewise, I have to say this as well. I have done posts where people are like, "Oh, you're amazing" and stuff, and I'm like, but I had a feeling. I'm just like, I don't think I really articulated that the way it should, and I don't feel good about it. And I don't let people tell me that I'm amazing, because what it is I probably just said something or had some emotion that they have, and I validated their emotion, and their emotion's an illusion. Like I'm not going to celebrate that. So
Yeah, sure, sure.
it's all super subtle, but I just go from a feeling of, if I did right by just the feelings. It's just like super. I can't even explain it. It's not
I
worth
know, I
trying.
know what you're talking about. Look, for me personally, I think that people like you and I, you sound similar to me, is like you can analyze and overanalyze things, to the nth degree if you allow yourself. Um, but I think a lot of the times in my own life experience in the last, particularly 6 years since doing this podcast, the last three, is I just don't really appreciate the impact that some words that either I say or the person that I'm speaking to says, that has a profound effect on someone else's life. And it's something that I just disregarded, but to them it was everything.
Mm.
So I kind of just let that marinate how it's supposed to, and I let it go. And you're an example of someone in my life. Like, we don't call each other every week. I don't ring you or message you and tell you how great you are. but you certainly have had an impact on my life. I wouldn't be talking to you if I didn't feel there was some value to me speaking with you and to you sharing your information so others can feel what I felt, So I, anyway, that's all I would say about that. But I just don't know if you can truly estimate the impact that you really have. And because this
Mm.
stuff lives almost eternally, you just don't know what your role in the world is going to play, whoever, 10 years down the track or anything like that. But
Absolutely, man. But that's really profound, by the way, because that's another way to explain the world doesn't need your voice, but like it needs a voice, doesn't need your voice, but then sometimes it does. And that's that subtle feeling we were talking about earlier. Like you might think it doesn't matter, it's not worth it. It's like, oh, people have heard this before. What's the point? But that you don't know that. Like you don't know. You don't know the flow and effect of what that will or will not have. You actually don't know. So
absolutely.
so you miss the old expression, you miss 100% of the shots you never take. And when you either can't be bothered or you judge it, like when judgment, by the way, is super important in natural law because it's where your discernment comes from. Like if you're not judging what's coming out of the television or your phone at you, you could end up with 15 boosters in your eyes,
Yes,
you know? So
right.
you have to judge so you can discern it. It's protective and it's moral. It actually keeps the framework of morality as judgment. But then there's the other kind of judgment, kind of like there's the other kind of debt, where if you prejudge everything, like you get this feeling of like, I should say something. It's like, nah, there's no point. Everyone's heard it before, or it doesn't matter. World doesn't need my voice, and you're judging. That's the negative kind of judgment because it's not our place to judge. It says it in every spiritual text in the Bible and the Tao Te Ching and everything else. It's like just judgment's not your place. That's the higher ups place. But you do need to judge when it comes to discernment. So you judge what's right for you. It's more what's incoming
Agreed.
than the outcoming. Like don't be afraid to speak. Don't be afraid to take that shot. Don't be afraid to try and start a new thing. Like don't be afraid to create. Because that's the other thing about the nasty people in the world and that they're really not creative. They use the unused morality, creativity, and goodness in people who aren't using it for themselves. They allow that to be loosed out, and that's what is used to create the world stage. And it
Mhm.
doesn't have to exist like that because as soon as we have agency within us, we're not dealing with agents in commerce and agents in the world. We're not dealing with all what we see on the world stage. That is when we're authoring and creating a different stage, but it's a lot of work to actually start using that instead of giving it away because that's the creative energy. And if we don't use it, someone else will. And that's why it's fair. That's why under natural law, it is fair that the world is what it is. It's also that's not the world. Like it's another topic altogether.
This is
But
what's fascinating about everything that you say, because like you have this ability to go, it's everything and it's nothing. Like it's just such a dance between the two worlds. But I think you really have to you really have to sort of experience a lot of your talks and your lives and and the things that you do just to understand and just watch it play out in your own life. So, when I listen to you and then I see things of how they are in the world, like and that so the number one thing would be at the moment petrol prices. And you mentioned this before, like I just don't recognize the price. Like I just pay it whatever it is and then I deal with it. Um, but it's also the illusion of scarcity. And when you start to figure out that, we have unlimited resources and, there's everything that's just fabricated and curated around playing on your deepest, darkest fears of, loss and all those sorts of things. When you detach from all of that and you see things as they are, you start to realize that there is a splice between like worlds. It is truly the matrix of red pill, blue pill, and all that kind of stuff. You start to really see how things are. Like you said, it's almost like it's not real. It's like a choose your own adventure. Remember those books? I don't know how old
yeah,
you
I love them. Yeah, no wait, I refer to that a fair bit. That choose your own adventure. I used to love
are.
those books. Yeah,
Me too. Yeah, I hardly read any books at school, but Choose Your Own Adventure was definitely the ones that I used to get lost in the which path was going to lead me down. So,
yeah,
but I think when you realize in that moment that you have a choice and then you can buy into any reality that you choose to curate for your own life, it's just a very interesting way to look at life, and I think life becomes likable and exciting and less daunting and less scary. And like obviously it's not devoid of any challenges. It's not like us walk around singing fucking kumbaya every day and just holding hands with everyone. But at the same time, it allows you to deal with everything at a much better capacity than what you did when you just
Absolutely.
fight the world.
Absolutely. Well, it's really well said. Really well said. It just gives you a choice. I love how you framed all that. And it is absolutely, I wouldn't add to it, by the way. I just wanted to say that was really well said. And
Thank you, mate.
the whole two worlds thing is very true too. Like there is the world, which is really unlimited. And then there's the world you're sold, which has all the scarcity and the fear and all that. And it's just up to you to learn how to differentiate and choose. And that comes from just letting go of the fear.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a big thing, but
But
it's
before I let
there.
you go, your time is very valuable to me. I've actually got to run off to MMA in the next sort of 20 minutes or so and take
Nice.
off. But I wanted to maybe I know I'm going to buy your training. Chanel and I, like, we've been looking at your stuff for a while, and she was messaging me saying, when are you going to get Tom on? And I want to ask him a bunch of questions and all this kind of stuff, but I'm just going to buy your course and deal with it. So um, that way I can kind of really get an in-depth, and I encourage everyone to do the same, because I just think it's just very fundamental grounding training that a lot of people would benefit from. But I'll link everything in the show notes so people know where to go. But I wanted to maybe get from you, maybe, I don't know if you would call it, immutable laws or just like principles that you live by on a daily basis, where like health, wealth, relationships, or intimacy, all of those sorts of things. Is there a way that you can articulate just how you go about life and how you adapt to this facade that we call the world, that's going on all the time?
Yeah, for sure. First of all,
Might be a
thank
hard
you.
question to answer.
Yeah, well, thank you for that before. And second of all, while I'll talk about it, I'm not a master of any of them, but I do have frameworks to help me become a master of at least some of it.
Yep.
So how I handle it is I'm fairly confident in the fact that there's no chart, no graph, no law, nothing you can write down that's ever the answer to anything. And I think most even biblical text and Tao, it's like if it's written down and you can describe it, you can chart it, it's not the real thing, but it does help point towards things, and that's what I like to share with people. So anything that I say is just something that's just you could take it for what it is and use it to point towards something that you can figure out for yourself.
Mhm.
But I also think that once you can definitely follow charts and things. Then once you master the chart, you become the chart, and the chart's irrelevant. Like so when you asked about frameworks, so there's a quote that I like, that man obeys the law and then the laws can obey man. So if you take electricity, for example, like you can't be a nitwit and stick your finger in, like just grab wires randomly and expect that you'll be okay. You'll come to harm. But once you actually learn to obey the laws of electricity, you can actually master electricity. And that means that you can master your own electromagnetic field. You can start to feel, especially even with your hands, most people can just do that as a simple exercise.
Mhm.
And when you get subtle enough with it, you feel the electricity that you can hold between your hands. Then, if you work with that, you can generate power and electricity, which is how you can, well, the best thing you can do is to heal other things and other people with it. You can structure water with it. You can purify, forever chemicals and whatever out of things with just your hands. Like we have the capacity to do that. But first, you got to obey the laws. So you got to have the humility. Then, as you get the power, you still have to be humble with the power, because if you start thinking you can misuse that and use it for your own benefit or your own like power, then you'll get spanked by it again.
Mhm.
So, also just in daily life, I like to always ask myself, like, where's this coming from? So, I have an introspective way of going about what you asked. So I go, where's this coming from and what's it for? Is it necessary? Kind of like the question before, or the statement, the world needs books, does it need my book? So for example, if I'm dealing with my wife, I'm like, is this in my highest good, her highest good? And we have a framework under natural law, which is we serve our creator first. Then under the creator, the next highest priority is us as individuals. So for her, it's her. For me, it's me. And the reason for that is because we can't be better than we are with our strength of our connection to life itself. than anything else. So we've got to get that right first and serve the highest good first before we can be of the best service to others. Much like if the airplane thing, you put your own mask on before your kid. And likewise, most people prioritize their kids first. It's super common. It's like it's all for the kids, it's all for the kids. So then it also becomes all for the work, all for the work. Therefore, the wife or the husband gets neglected, and absolutely the creator gets neglected. Whereas the creator provides all of that by virtue of serving the creator. So once again, we kind of get inverted with how we're supposed to go about things. But when we get it right in the right order, things just naturally play out the way they should. So if you value your creator, you value yourself, and then you value your spouse first before your work and your kids, then those get taken care of automatically because you can put food on the table for kids, but you can starve them of the energetic food. They get, just stuff can go bad there. So that's one of the things that we have. We have that framework. And then the better we get at that, the less we need a framework. And so that's with relationships and intimacy. I guess you could put that into that basket. With wealth, it's about the inner wealth, which is how we're cultivating our connection to, same thing, our creator and ourself. That's the highest thing, because when you've got that right, it's harder to be swayed by the illusions of the world to pull you out of that connection and then fall for the illusion of fear and then start acting out of ego and greed and disservice and whatever. And if you can hold that, then what you do is in service, meaning that it will have a positive effect in the world and you will be sustained properly as a result. You can have so much inner wealth that doesn't matter what's in your bank account, everything's okay, nothing will ever go bad. And then with what else was there? So wealth, intimacy, relationships.
Health.
Oh, health.
Mhm.
So health is the same thing, because if you really prioritize yourself, in a selfish way, like screw my family, I'm going to the gym for 5 hours so I can do all my sets and
Mhm.
do my protein shake and then do my meditation and then do my whatever. Like that's getting selfish. But prioritizing your own health is really important, because I see it in a lot of parents, especially dads. They get quite unhealthy into their 40s and 50s because they did what appears to be selfless and moral
Mhm.
in doing everything for the kids. And then, I don't surf anymore. The last time I saw my surfboard was 5 years ago. Or you know what I mean? Like, I don't need to expand on that. So, but you're sacrificing, and there's virtue and there is honor in sacrifice. But when it becomes martyring, that's where it's dishonorable. So once again, super subtle. Everything I talk about has a lot of subtleties, which can take a while to explain. But sacrifice, good; martyring, bad. So then only you'll know. You have to ask yourself, and that's why it's important. You commune with a higher, like whatever you say, creator, God, life, nature, life force, whatever you want to call it. To me, it's all the same stuff.
Mhm.
So the better you get with that, the better everything else will be as a result. But while you're trying to will it and force it and do it all yourself, you're actually ignoring this universal, unlimited supply of things that will just always take care of you. But everybody fails. I still fail. I'll let go, and then I'll realize, halfway through the day, I'm like, oh damn, like I forgot. I forgot. I've got to get back into the remembering, and then I get back on track, and then all of a sudden Summer's happier. All of a sudden I'm not stressed about money. All of a sudden I feel like I've got more energy, more time, more room for intimacy,
Mhm.
more wealth in every respect. So yeah, it's a fine balance, and it is a dance, and you have to work hard on it every day. But you definitely can't let go of yourself and let go of who you are. You've always got to remember that first and foremost. And sometimes I'll say this too. Sometimes you do need to have conversations with your family. And this is why communication is so important, because if you take the offer of somebody else calling you selfish, but the inner part of you that's really subtle, it knows, it's like, but this isn't selfish. Like, my body, my soul needs this, and it'll only take what it needs. It won't take advantage of that. It won't spend all day out surfing with the boys and I haven't even called you and whatever else. It's like it wants what it needs, and I will honor that. And as a result, you will be honored. And if you can communicate in not a putting down way, an angry way, a you'll do what I say way, I'm right way, it's like stop interfering with me way, like that's not what's happening. You communicate with clarity, with standing, and then now equity is restored. But some people, like men, I'll just say, because it's really common, you have such a desire to keep your family happy that you will not surf for years. You will not pick up that guitar. You will not pick up that hammer and chisel and make something just for the fun of making it, not because you need a table in the house. And as a man, it's real. I can't speak for women, but as a man, that's really important to do. And it's also really important that you don't internalize everything to the point where you can't communicate effectively, because we only do it to ourselves. This is, I guess, the crux of it all, is that when we're failing, when we're like, no one else is oppressing us, we oppress ourselves. We can always communicate. And if it's not going well and it's turning into arguments, and then there's less intimacy and then there's less wealth, well, that's in our control. That's in our power. That's not happening to us. We're creating that. So
Mm.
maybe ask the question. It's like, all right, so every time I bring up the fact that I've got to go for a surf, she thinks it's like, this is an example because I've just dealt with a lot of guys over the last 6 months that this has almost been like a story that it's almost like it got put into the thing and everyone's reading the same one. I'm like, what? Again, this story? So so it's not that no one wants you to not surf. But what's not happening is you're not being in your full capacity in its honest, truthful self, which is just self-evident. So you're hiding stuff or you're justifying things or you're not doing it and then getting resentful in shadow ways. And then that's coming out in the way that you say, you look great today. But it does, like, because women are super sensitive, they can read through stuff. It's like, I don't think you think that I look great. And you're like, but I just told you, like, I do think that. It's like, but it's not actually what you're saying. What you're saying comes from your being, not from your words. And women are very perceptive to that. So that's why things can break down in communication. So just to summarize all of that, even though there's the hierarchies and stuff, communication is really, really vital, because first of all, it's the how you commune with your creator. Then it's how you commune with yourself. Like, how much negative sabotage and self-doubt and talk do we have? And then what people will do is that they'll then become like new age and self-help, ignore that, and then just go, I'm the best. I'm love and light. I'm a warrior of the light. I'm this. I'm that. And it's like, I call it Ralphing. Ralph from The Simpsons. It's like, I'm a warrior. I'm spiritual. It's like that's where people, so they create this
Classic.
chasm of
Yeah.
nothingness, and then things go bad. So you got to learn how to communicate with yourself very well, and you have clarity, and then how you communicate with your significant other, and then
Mm, of
obviously with your kids, with your business associates, with the world, as a
course.
flow and effect. Yeah.
All an extension. Hey, well said. Mate, send me all the links. I'll put everything in the show
Cool.
notes, and everyone can find you, connect with you, and learn from you. Thanks for being having an impact and being there for me when I needed certain training at certain times. I'm glad you're back. I know off air I was telling that you seem to have disappeared and then you respawned, and here you are again. And I'm glad to have you back. So we should catch up again soon. I wouldn't mind talking about the goings on of the world and
Mhm.
certain belief systems that you may or may not have. But for now, I think we've covered a lot of ground, and I think a lot of people would really resonate with this one. So I appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate you too. I always actually, like I said, I enjoy your energy and what you're doing. I think you're doing a good thing. So it's always so when I get off of an interview, sometimes I feel like it was a drain. But when I speak with you, I have a very neutral feeling. Like, I feel like it's the subtle feeling is that's it's yeah, anyway. It's good.
Yeah,
In
yeah,
a
it's
roundabout
awesome.
way. So thank you. Appreciate it.
The feeling's mutual. A mate of mine, Luke, he says you're a cup filler, right? So you're not a drainer of energy, you're a cup filler. So he goes, the more cup fillers you can have in your life, the better it is. So
Yeah, I like that.
you're definitely a cup filler, mate. So I appreciate you.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you.
Talk again. You have an amazing day. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Adrian.
Take care.